just as Don has said, to extend our sympathy. There are a large number of people killed overnight in a fire on a halting site in Glen Namuck out in Carrickmine, so our thoughts are with the families, and we thank the firefighters and the first attenders. I suppose it puts everything into perspective, but you know, the main, for the last week or so, media have been focused, indeed they've been dominated by speculation about the date of a general election, and it seems to be a bit of an obsession of journalists and political insiders, and that speculation is all part of the play and game playing that goes on here in substitute for real political debate. And it actually, to a certain degree, suits those in government, because there's no discussion about trolley weights, there's no discussion about homelessness, there's no discussion about the plight of people out there, and it actually, to some degree, I think, deepens a disillusionment which some people have with politics, and the Taoiseach's refusal to deal with the issue and the obvious discomfiture of the Taoiseach exposes this government as a coalition of chaos. And Mr Kenny's focus is clearly, understandably, on how many seats Fine Gael will win to ensure his re-election as Taoiseach. He's not been straight with the Taoiseach, but that's hardly surprising. He wasn't straight with the electorate. He's broken every single commitment that he made after his government was formed. And this chaos and this sense of crisis and stumbling from one debacle to another is reflected also in the government's attitude to the North. This government inherited the peace process and the end of conflict. It was given it on a plate. But since Fine Gael and Labour came into power, progress in the North has not been a priority. The working of the All-Ireland institutions has not been a priority. Facing up to the British government has not been a priority. And their policy is dictated by Labour and Fine Gael opposition to this party. And the Taoiseach has failed to uphold agreements which are international agreements between two governments. In the case of the Good Friday Agreement, an agreement which was voted upon by people across this island. He's failed to challenge the British government over its refusal to provide information on the Dublin and Monaghan bombings. And he's failed to develop a strategy on how to secure this. So agreements have stalled and agreements have been unpicked. And the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach have also supported the Tory party cuts to welfare and the public services. And they support them because that is their policy in this state. And their policy is deeply partitionist. Austerity is not. Austerity affects people north and south. So the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach need to be on the side of the Good Friday and the other agreements. Progress is possible in the north, but the Irish government needs to make it a priority, and part of our responsibility is to raise that issue. And I know that sometimes people are so focused on the local issues or on the issues which are just around homelessness, social and economic issues in this state. But we need also to raise the whole issue of the North, of Irish unity, and of the responsibility of the government to fulfil its obligations in this regard. Now, Michael McGrath recently was right when he said that the government had adopted Fianna Fáil policy on the economy. But what he failed to say was that they also adopted Fianna Fáil policy on health, that they've sustained the chaos in our health services, as well as in housing and immigration and education. Sinn Féin is presenting thoughtful, costed and effective alternative policies to tackle the many issues this government has failed to resolve, and in some cases which this government has made worse. And I want to commend the people who are involved in our policy development unit, and I also particularly want to commend the people who put together our alternative budget proposals, the backroom people, but also very particularly the way that Pierce Doherty has articulated our position on all of those matters, because there's a battle of ideas, and we're proposing policy choices for citizens that are rooted in Republican principles of fairness and inclusivity, and which are drawn from the proclamation. And what we need to do in this election is to outline what type of society we wish to build and what a real recovery. So in the one case, our vision for the future, but also in the here and now, the practical steps, costed steps that we would take. So to mention the chair shaw a Gerry Adams Kiart Wayne Plitchiacht. And that's what this conference is about. At its core, politics is about choices and the interests that you seek to represent. Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, and to their shame, the Irish Labour Party are representing the interests of the privileged few. And their policies reflect this. Sinn Féin, on the other hand, stands with families, with workers, and indeed with those who may be better off. A lot of people are better off. We're not against wealth, but they're decent people who also believe that Ireland can and should be a fair society. So Creighton Wedge go smear, go gahi and Gilligar Frastal or Nadini agus ni a Wallerch. We believe that citizens are entitled to secure jobs with decent paying conditions, that citizens are entitled to a home, to social and affordable housing, to a top quality public service right across all their needs. And that belief, that objective and that vision has to guide the important task of policy development. So we have our objective, we have our vision, we have our objectives, and then we have our policy steps. So also, and we need to be very clear about this, the crisis, the ongoing crises in housing and in health are not an accident. They're a direct result of government policy. And let's not forget, sometimes everybody gets a wee bit fatigued by this. Let's not forget that those people lying on trolleys in A and E wards or in corridors are our own family members. They're our neighbours. They're our friends. They're not aliens dropped in from outer space. They're us. And so too are the thousands of people in mortgage distress and those citizens who are homeless. They're also us. And the 500,000 people in 8 years who have been scattered across the globe as a result of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour immigration policy, they're also us. Let's also be mindful of how increasingly polarised and unequal society has become after 5 years of Fine Gael and Labour in government. Let's be very, very clear. We want to change this. We're not joking about it. We're not throwing shapes at it. We're deadly serious that we want to correct this, because we believe that an equal society is possible. We believe that cronyism and greed can be replaced with fairness and hope. And we want to be in government to improve the quality of life for families, to deliver progress on jobs, housing and health. We're not a debating society. We're very serious about achieving these objectives. So to do that means being in government with a programme for government which advances this agenda. So we have to have coherent, realistic and robust policy platforms. Now Fine Gael and Labour are perpetuating a lie that it's possible to reduce the overall tax take while increasing investment in frontline services. And this approach means that high earners will be the winners once again, that those at the very top, those 5%, will benefit, while families like the families we all come from, citizens who are dependent on public services, will lose out once again. So our policy alternatives produce and argue for a different way, for a better way, for a route to a fair recovery. We want to ease the tax burden on workers and families. We want to bring about an end to unfair tax reliefs. We're asking the top 5% who earn the most to pay their fair share. And in terms, I just want to commend once again the alternative budget. We are saying that we would recruit 1,000 new Gardaí next year to protect local communities. I know from my own constituency in Louth that the public meetings that we have held recently, the largest attendance is dealing with this issue of crime. On Thursday, as we published our alternative budget, Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital in Drogheda had the largest trolley numbers in its emergency department in this state. And that evening, that had doubled, forcing the hospital to go off call temporarily and to stop taking patients. That is a direct result of government policies. And the cuts right across all of the sectors, whether it's in local schools, whether it's in post offices, whether it's in public transport, whether it's in Garda numbers, and particularly the crisis of homelessness and our health services need to be remedied. So we're proposing to invest in public expenditure, to prioritise those areas of health, education and childcare, and to deliver more Gardaí, more nurses, more midwives and more teachers. We're also saying very, very clearly, by dint of getting rid of the family home tax and water charges, that we will put between €600 and €2,000 back into the pockets of the average worker. And that's the type of real tax reform that will make a real difference to families and to society, as opposed to the cynical auction politics of the Conservative parties. We also have committed to removing workers, not just those on minimum wages, but 100,000 workers out of the universal social charge. To develop the type of fair and just and prosperous society that we're advocating, there's a need for a strong economy. So Sinn Féin are very, very clear that we are pro-business. A strong economy, including a thriving enterprise sector, is essential to sustain decent, accessible public services and to protect vulnerable citizens. So we're about supporting and encouraging entrepreneurs, and particularly SMEs, the smaller and medium enterprises. And that includes our proposals to introduce a self-employed tax credit, to provide seed capital, to bring in other measures. We would increase funding to build social housing, to build affordable housing, to tackle the homelessness crisis, and to make capital investment to grow the economy. And all of this, as I've said earlier, is grounded in the Republican principles of fairness and equality. So our job is to interpret, in this year of 2015, Republican principles and make them relevant to the society that we're in today. It also, and let's repeat this, makes no sense on an island of this size to have two currencies, two tax systems, two sets of public services. So we want to see a planned approach to economic development across this island. We want to see greater All-Ireland cooperation within public services, greater support for small and medium business, and the creation of a border economic development zone to harmonise trade. Now, the Taoiseach has characterised the forthcoming election as a choice between stability and chaos. But there is no stability for low-paid workers. There's no stability for citizens on zero-hour contracts. There's no stability for people who are unemployed. There's no stability for families who have children with disabilities. There's no stability for patients, for frontline workers in our hospital A&E departments, or for those who are facing the prospect of losing their homes because the government refuses to put manners on the banks. Sinn Féin and government will put manners on the elites, including on the banks. The government's idea of stability is the maintenance of a deeply unequal status quo. And that's not the stability that our people need or want. If the Taoiseach really believes what he says, he should have the courage of his convictions and allow citizens to make the choice. The Taoiseach should stop the game playing of recent days. He should resign, and he should call a general election, and he should do that now. Sinn Féin's ready. Sinn Féin's ready. We're eager for the battle. We want to be engaged in a genuine battle of ideas. It has been a fact that some combination of Fine Gael, Labour and Fianna Fáil have been in government here since the foundation of the state. But the landscape is changing, and Sinn Féin is leading that change. And we want to continue to lead that by leading the next government. So what we need to do is to build the goodwill that's obvious there towards the type of ideas that we and others are articulating. We need to build that into an unstoppable momentum for positive change across the island of Ireland. Next year, and it happened just a stone's throw from here, marks the 100th anniversary of the Easter Rising of 1916. And that is an important date in the history of our nation. And we've seen it in the spontaneous way that people have responded to the different events that have been organised. And it was my honour to represent us at the reinterment of Tomás Ceannt. And what I thought was most striking were the thousands of people who filed past his coffin when it lay in state in the military barracks in Cork. And that's the heartbeat of people who have national spirit. We're just back from New York. The American connection into the Rising is very, very, very clear, and there's a great sense of pride there and throughout the diaspora. But this isn't just a commemorative event that's coming up. This is an opportunity to actually deliver on the ideals of the 1916 proclamation. So we believe passionately in an agreed and a united Ireland and in a real republic, a citizen-centred, rights-based society. So today is about laying out the policy platform which will take us the next step of that journey. Go Ramila, my